So, good night, dear subscribers and casual viewers. So, what we will do now is we should speak a little bit about Jordan. But I will not speak about like its history or its role in the Middle East. Even though, of course, it's interesting, but not terribly interesting, I would say. I mean, yes, I mean, maybe you're interested more, in the secret kind of layer, but many times the secret layer is actually not more important and more interesting than the public layer. I mean, and I speak about it a lot in this channel that I mean, the most interesting thing can be learned just by opening your eyes to, the reality that is all around you. And of course, you need to be critical and to avoid disinformation. But I mean, I really think that most of the things can be just learned by public sources. And I spoke already about Uri Avneri and the Suez crisis. I don't know if you remember it, but I spoke about maybe months ago. I think it's very interesting. And it's kind of like the book that he published with another author on 1957 is kind of like I would say that it's kind of like it's not an historical book, but like very high importance. But it's for me it's important. I read it and kind of as a direction or kind of like as methodology, and also as kind of like guiding principle. So this will be a very short video in which I will discuss, briefly, maybe just 2 minutes, I'll speak about Jordan. Let's start with an anecdote. So, I described Jordan in one of the previous videos, and and I've said that, that, presumably they are very different from Israel, but, they're actually very, similar, and they're actually good friends for a long, long time now. Even though of course, snakes cannot really be friends. Lizards cannot really be friends. There is like a very low limit to the friendship, and they are only friends up to this limit, but consistently to this limit. And this is, like that. Certainly since the 1960s, but probably way before that. And famously, during '73, the Jordanians actually warned Israel from the looming attack of the Arab nations. And they didn't listen to them. And as I said, the 67 Jordanian war, the 6 Day Wars, the Jerusalem front was actually a hoax. Givat HaTachmoshet is like, it's a joke. It's like, it's an Israeli buffoonery, like a charade. That's what they do in Israel. But I'll let you feel the details yourself, or if needed, I'll speak about it some other time. What exactly was the nature of the hoax and why was it needed? Of course, the general theme is and still is controlling the Palestinian population and enslaving them by cooperation of both of these dirty powers, and they of course have access to the Venetian slave trade. Now it should be said, it was very clear to me just from the beginning that of the journey that the way that Israelis treat the Palestinians can be seen as a metaphor for how they used the Titans in the past. But of course, these are not the same populations. Titans are Titans and Palestinians are Palestinians. But certainly during the 20th century, the kind of the differences were blurred, because it was gradually understood that you can actually, people can eat the tea and become kind of like Titanic, in behavior and capabilities. And with time, because of the lack of males, people even forgot the true nature of the Venusians, to a point that some think that they are like robots and like asexuals, or all sorts of nonsense that I discussed in what I call the robot saga. But the tea can be used to enslave people that are completely not related to the Titan subjugation. For example, Palestinians. Through the mechanism of the I know the trained bacteria, but not only using that. I mean, it's also, I mean, but by the fact that, I mean, they become very strong. I mean, disproportionately strong to, I mean, to the size and like the quality, like both Jordan and Israel, and these strengths allow them to, I mean, to have like, their ways in the international scene, and for, I mean, most importantly, to keep good relationship with the United States and get military forces. I mean, you know, F-16, things like that from the United States, and this is like, I mean, a long time. I mean, it wasn't always like that. It should be said that, I mean, in the first decades, I mean, Israel were more supported by actually other nations. It took some time and of course it was culminated by, I mean, I would say, I mean, kind of like, I mean, hostile takeover of the United States over Israel. I mean, during the 1980s, up until the 1990s, I mean, because of the scenes and because, I mean, the United States reached to the conclusion that, I mean, these cool children cannot, like, I mean, be independent, and they were correct. So, I mean, they took control of the Mossad, and, I mean, and they are, you know, and they, I mean, they control many politicians, and, I mean, in ways that are actually, I mean, very similar to things that they've done, like, in Latin America since the beginning of the 20th century. So, it's not a very new, I would say, kind of, like, I mean, program. It's not something very kind of out of the ordinary for the Americans. Of course, the fact that they said that they, I mean, rightfully, I mean, took control over Israel and the Mossad doesn't mean that I justify, I mean, the United States in the general sense. I mean, if they, I mean, if they have like, used their power over Israel to, I mean, to prevent cruelties against humanity, that was a different thing. But no, I mean, they only continue the cruelties against humanity and specifically cruelties against me. So, I mean, they are the real evils, like, I mean, the strong evils, like, in the story of the United States, and that's why they are going to be destroyed by the Cherubs. It should be said that, I mean, the fact that Jordan and Israel, I mean, are actually friends is not like a real secret, and it was always known, like, way before the actual, like, you know, like, formal peace during the I remember that, I mean, it was 1994, I guess, that, I mean, the peace process was kind of, like, I mean, signed, and this was like, I mean, all-day television, like, I mean, like, you know, television show, I mean, you know, broadcasting, I mean, you know, of the ceremony, and like, I mean, it was evening, and my friend Ari Yerushalmi was with me in my apartment, and we played we were 10 years old, and we played the Nintendo, the NES, or something like that, or maybe the Super Nintendo, and we played the game, and I mean, so after, like, during the evening, his father, Yossi Yerushalmi, actually an interesting man, I must say, but never, it's not that important. I mean, so he arrived like the apartment, like to you know, to take his son home, like, I mean, because it was evening. So he was amused, like, he told us, I mean, don't you watch TV? Don't you watch, like, you know, the peace process? I mean, what do? You play the, you know, the Nintendo? I mean, that's what they do. You do all the time. I mean, why do? I mean, there is like an historical moment, and we were like, I mean, meh. And I must say that, I mean, in that particular case, even though I think he's a very smart guy, like Yossi, but actually we were right. We were right. It was a buffoonery, and another kind of, like, I mean, theater show that is very common in the Middle East. It makes nothing. And also the speech, I mean, the discourse, like, that supposedly there is a cold peace between the nations, and, like, I mean, this is all bullshit. I mean, it doesn't even matter, because the important things were, I mean, taken care of, like, in a secret way, I mean, since very, very long ago. And of course, I mean, the main two objectives are, first, using the gates, like, without kind of, like, I mean, in a joint way, without, like, I mean, you know, declining to conflict, because it should be said that the gates are an asset, and there are gates not only in Israel, and they might, like, I mean, conflict regarding the proper usage of the gates can lead to conflict between nations, and even wars. And as I said many times, part of the Iranian, you know, the Iranians, I mean, were good friends of the Israelis until the revolution, and they were actually very good friends with Israel. This was actually a public fact. It was like a known fact. Like, I mean, like, Israelis, I mean, like, traveled to Tehran, like, I mean, for business, for studying, for pleasure. I mean, it was, they were like, they were not, I mean, to say that they were in peace, I mean, kind of like implies that, I mean, before that they were in war, but So it's not that they were in peace. It was just a totally normal relationship. I mean, until the Islamic Revolution. Like, I mean, totally buddies. Like, I mean, no problem at all. Like, I mean, with, you know, all sorts of like corporations and, you know, and cultural, like, I mean, like, you know, and of course there were many Jews in Persia that, I mean, historical Persian Jews that, I mean, they immigrated to Israel and were very proud of their, I mean, Iranian heritage. There was no problem at all. Like, I mean, of course, all of that, I mean, should not imply that, I mean, it was kind of like, I mean, some kind of, like, you know, a golden era to miss, because this was a friendship that was based on crimes against humanity. The Shah, like the ruler of Iran, was one of the beasts, like the beasts of the 20th century, like a piece of shit, like a monumental piece of shit. So I mean, do not miss this time at all. And I spoke about that already. That I mean, when you just open your eyes, you understand that. I mean, if you just, I mean, watch, like, I mean, the kind of the public, like, I mean, information, it's really unclear what was the fight all about, and why are they still fighting. It's very, very unclear. Like, I mean, and it should be said that in Israel, and specifically, and this is not a secret, so I can tell it, like, I mean, without like fearing that the police, military police, will knock on my door to arrest me, to say, I mean, to expose military secret. This is not a secret at all. That the Israeli intelligence is at least, I mean, by what they say. Okay, let's speak about not what they do, but what they say. Like, according to, I mean, to the public agenda of the Israeli intelligence, a huge part of what they do is to deal with Iran. A huge part, and they are very big in Israel. As I said, the military intelligence is huge. I mean, like in proportion to the military, I mean, in general, and of course the Shabak and the Mossad. I mean, they all supposedly deal with Iran all the time. So I mean, it's kind of like a huge deal, but nobody really knows. I mean, what's all the fuss all about? I mean, they don't even share borders. I mean, despite the fact that they actually do, and this was discussed in the Bicycle 16 saga, part 16. But I mean, without, like, I mean, prying into like the secret kind of a layer. I mean, yeah. So there was a revolution. So I mean, this fact in itself is not like satisfactory to explain the problem, because it's, I mean, totally not true that, I mean, historically, I mean, Muslim Shias were, I know, in fight with Jews. This is complete bullshit. It's just completely untrue. And even before the revolution, there were many Muslims, like, I mean, Shias Muslims in Iran. It's not that overnight millions of people converted from whatever, I don't know, to Islamic Shia. That was the religion, and there was no problem. So there is like a secret layer, and as I said many times, what actually happened is, first of all, they ran into conflict regarding the usage of the gates, and this conflict was become much more severe because of the revolution, because the Ayatollahs did not like, I mean, like the agenda of the Shah on the matter, and also there was the Israelis, I mean, at least according to the Iranians, and like from their perspective, the Israelis stabbed them in the back, like betrayed them. They were their friends, and they kind of like committed like disgusting, I mean, betrayal that of the kind that you cannot even speak about. That, I mean, is kind of like shameful from the Iranian perspective, that they cannot even speak about it in public. And this is something classic for Israelis. Like, I mean, you can totally, I mean, imagine that something like that happened, because this is classical Mossad, you know, and you know, not only to betray, like, you know, your allies, but also to do it like in a way that will be shameful to them, so they will not be able to speak about it. Like, this is like, I mean, this is like, you know, Mossad 101, like, you know. So because of that, they started to, like, the higher ups in Iran started to hate the Israelis, like emotional hate that is like very strong and not, I mean, built on historical problems, but on things that happened, like, I mean, recently, relatively. And of course, because they hate them so much, so after some time, the Israelis began to hate the Iranians as well. Even though, I mean, initially they didn't really care, but I mean, because from their perspective, I mean, it's all part of, you know, Zerat sport, as the song go. Like, I mean, whatever, we betrayed you, you betrayed us. I mean, from their perspective, I mean, you know, I mean, friends are, you know, חברים יש רק באגד, as they say in Israel. I mean, they're lizards, so, but the Iranians didn't view it that way. They actually saw that the Israelis are their friends, so they were kind of like surprised, to say the least, that the Israelis betrayed them. So they developed this hate, but because of this hate, I mean, after several years, I mean, the Israelis also started to hate them as well, and this hatred is still, I mean, the main fuel for the conflict, but not really. It's actually, I would say that this is secondary. I mean, it's important fuel, but it's also, I mean, I don't know if it's the main fuel. I mean, it's one of two tenets, because a very important tenet is the fact that Israel needs enemies, and they are losing their enemies with the times, because Iraq is like kind of like destroyed long ago, and Syria is like on ruins, and even before that the military were like a very after the collapse of the USSR, it's not like Jordan, like they have like and the Egyptian switched to at some point switched to American military. But Syria didn't do the switch, so they were kind of like stuck with T-30, I don't know what, or 60 or 80, I don't remember the T's, but they are all defective T's like tanks, and and without like so and they're still like that. They're still like they don't really they're not a threat at all, and so the Israelis need enemies because they are Spartan. They require enemies in order to to kind of to justify their existence. So this is also a very important fuel for the conflict with Iran. But some of it is based on hate that was developed on the Iranian side after the Israelis, from their perspective, which is probably correct. Like it's probably actually happened because this is classical Israelis and classical Mossad, that they betrayed them like in a very shameful way, like to both sides, that you cannot even speak about it. And this is related to the Titan exploitation. And I don't know the details, but it doesn't take a genius to understand this. The Titan's exploitation was always, not in the 20th century, from very early on, it was related to homosexuality and pedophilia. For reasons that, I guess my listeners that are mostly of the intelligence services, at least at the time of the recording understand very well. So, it makes everything that relates to it, certainly from Islamic perspective, very, very secretive and shameful. Like they don't speak about it. Like even Israelis don't speak about it. Of the widespread homosexuality and pedophilia within the higher ranks of the higher ups. Even Israelis do not speak about it, and they are the queen of the Eurovisions. The gay Tel Aviv is like the gay capital of the solar system or even the galaxy. I'm not following the proper ranking in Time Out magazine, but I think it's the first in the solar system and maybe third in the galaxy, according to the recent Time Out ranking. So, but even that, they do not admit the reality of what's really going on among the higher ups of Israel. So certainly, in Islamic states, they don't speak about it, and so so it's probably something that relates to it. Most probably, not certainly, but not 100%, but something maybe the Shah was a homosexual or pedophile, and they cannot speak about it because even though they hate him, it's kind of like a shameful thing, or maybe one of the religious leaders was like that. Things like that are happening. It's not uncommon, and this is a known reality that many times religious leaders, they are homosexuals or pedophiles. It's a known problem. Most certainly, it's like the worst historical problem for the Catholic Church. That is kind of their main problem in our time and throughout the second half of the 20th century. But it's certainly, there were quite a bit of rabbis that are like that, and the history of Israel is full of both scandals that were published and also silent scandals that are known by in the relevant subgroups of population regarding homosexual conduct, but more importantly pedophilia among rabbis and students. It happened quite a bit. So yeah, it makes. I wouldn't fall off my feet to learn that that something like that was kind of the pretext. But with Islamic figure as pretext for this shameful affair. Anyway, conflicts regarding the usage of the gates are certainly possible. And the Jordanians and the Israelis mainly, came to agreement. And de facto they are in peace since very long ago. And the Americans like it. They don't like, the Americans don't like the children, because the Middle East is full of, undisciplined children. All over the place there are children. It's the children place. Most certainly Israel, but it's not only Israel. It should be said that this is the children place, the Middle East. Everybody's... the actual, I speak metaphorically, but the actual age, median age of the population is, tremendously lower than that of Europe or the United States. But, even the old people are children. This is they are all children, not only in Israel. So, and Americans don't like that. I mean, the children fight because they need to kind of like to start to separate them, and like and they are doing it since the 50s. And again, since the Suez crisis. But they it's not that the American president really like this kind of like this role of like being the grown-up for the children in the Middle East. So the fact that Jordan and Israel are adjacent states that de facto lives in peace for a long time, this is excellent from the point of view of the Americans. And when the USSR was still exist, they also liked it. And of course this peace allows both nations to commit crimes against humanity, and specifically against the Titans and also against the Palestinians. And of course, and people think, okay, so they enslave aliens that we don't care about them, and also the enslaved Palestinians that actually we really don't care about them as well. So, but they live in peace. What do you want them to be in war, like the Iranians and the Israelis that always like threat to annihilate each other, or like Israel and Egypt? Like throughout the 50s and the 60s, that was kind of always there was always there was always like a bear of TNT that was aimed to explode, and many times it did and so they say, okay, well, we are happy that these particular two children get along with each other, even though it's not publicly so, but the important stuff is that in essence it's like that. And so let them have their way with the Titans and the Palestinians. It's not a big price to pay. This is generally the American agenda, and of course they will be annihilated. The United States will be annihilated by the cherubs. The United States will be annihilated. We will never forgive them. We will never forgive the United States of America. But let's get back to Jordan. There is much to say regarding Jordan, but maybe just I like to raise one point, and let's rephrase it as a question. Like, who are the biggest scumbags? The Israelis or the Jordanians? Maybe we should say something that is not completely known to the public, and actually it's described very well. In what book? You will be surprised. In the book that was written by not none other than Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, before he was actually a major politician, while he was still an ambassador to the UN, I think in 1993, like Makom Tachat HaShemesh. It's a relatively interesting book. I read almost all of it. It's quite lengthy. He wrote it when he was quite young. He wrote it in English actually, and it was translated to Hebrew. And it discusses the Middle East. It says it's very poorly edited because he repeats many things again and again, and probably it was written with the help of a ghostwriter, but not all of it. Certainly, at the time it's probably something that was in line with what he actually thought. Of course, what he does in what he wrote is completely different, but this is life. But one of the things that he discusses is that is Jordan. That that they are tremendously successful royal family, because for 100 years they keep in power, and nothing destabilizes their old style monarchy, and while everything around them is always on fire, and moreover, and this is something that Netanyahu writes about pretty extensively in this book. Like, he described how their neighbors were for a long time they were like predator beasts that wanted to eat each other. Of course, he does not count Israel among the predators, but Israel is of course the main predator. But no, but yes, Israel is also one of the predators. But yes, it's true that Jordan existed for so long among predatory animals that always they were never stable, and they're still not stable today, and they were always in fight with each other and always aimed to swallow swallow, like, I mean, the other, like, kingdoms or like, Arab, like, I mean, I don't know, Dutcheries, I don't know what's the name, like, Nesichuyot, like Emirates, and to swallow each other, and in a miraculous way, and Jordan was always weak, very weak. I mean, relates to all of them. And in a miraculous way, they kind of, like, they stayed in power, the same family, and their regime was always stable, and they managed to, like, always get the upper hand, like, in all the wars. Like, I mean, when the Arabs, were strong, I mean, they presumably were part of the Arab League of Nations, and presumably, I mean, cooperated with them even against the Israelis. But when the Israelis, I mean, became stronger, they quickly, I mean, switched sides, behind the scenes, and they managed to have good relationship with Israel. Again, way decades before the formal peace, the Nintendo peace process, way before that. So, I mean, and also, I mean, they managed to get good ties with the Americans, but also they were okay with the Russians. Like, they were always, the snakes of the Middle East, like the ultimate snakes of the Middle East, this royal family. And it's still like that, and nobody ever threatened them, even though they commit terrible crimes against humanity, both on the surface level against the Palestinians, but more so in the secret layer. And they subjugate the Titans in a cool way, not as cool as the Israelis, because nobody is as cool as the Israelis, but very cool way. So, taking all of that into account, and of course you can be certain that each of the monsters that you now see, like, in the video, like, are serious hybrids, like in my terminology, which means that they ate a lot of the cheese throughout their life, and they are, like, they manifest titanic, behavior, and including the famous, presumably psychic abilities, which I will discuss in some other time, but, don't be afraid of it. It's mostly child play, because they're all children. The problem is that you cannot discuss it in public, so it gives much more, like, much more, it makes, like, the actual threat much more fearsome than it actually is, because if people were able to discuss it, then it was much actually easier to tell everybody, like, how to defend against it. Mostly don't eat the drug. This is like, when you do it, you actually subjugate yourself to these creatures. But again, you can also be infected by the bacteria if you are a target of the intelligence, like, and then it's against your will. But even then, there are ways to actually combat it, and just knowing what it is like 90% of the fight. But you cannot speak about it, and this creates like a terrible threat out of things that is not that fearsome. But yes, of course, these monsters, they also have this kind of psychic ability. And ego, like crazy ego, like unbelievably, stupid and detached from reality. But and they use it, of course. Most of all, for what? To stay in power. So the question is, who is more disgusting, the Jordanians or the Israelis? And the answer is that the Israelis are far more disgusting, even though they should both they should and would be destroyed both. Like the cherubs cannot even from their perspective, it's almost the same. Like they are the same skunks. Like in the two sides of the Dead Sea. But why is it that the Israelis are much more disgusting? Because I'll tell you, that's my opinion. You can beg to differ, but I'll tell you what's my opinion on the matter. So what I think is that the Jordanians use the special power of the Titans and the privileges that it entails. Should be said, by the way, that they, like the Israelis, they were punished. Because punishment, of the cherubs is not like, I've said many times, it's not like, it's not like, distributed among state lines, but among the behaviors that many times are in correlation to state lines. So de facto, yes, different states receive different punishment, but it's because of many times the behavior. But if if people in the United States cooperated with the Israelis, or in Germany or France or whatever, or Mozambique, I don't know what, and did the same crimes, they would be punished the same. The punishment is kind of is personal, and of course, if it's very big, it creates it's kind of like a national punishment. This was happened during the famous in the 1980s. But in essence, it's a personal punishment against personal crimes. So, the question is, why are the Israelis much more disgusting? I'll tell you my view on the matter. The Jordanians, they use their special powers that, predicated, on the subjugation of the Titans and the abuse of the tea. I mean, what they've done, I mean, was that they, like, it's not, of course, it's not just the royal family, because they had, like, you know, like the Hashmin, whatever it's called in English, it's kind of like, which is the upper class, like the upper echelon of the society in Jordan, and below them there are like Palestinians, which are, as I said, the Ubermans, like the lower caste, but there are also the Bedouins that are another kind of like lower class. And there is like the higher class, and on top of the higher class there is like the royal family, and they are all, I mean, they consider themselves the same ethnicity, they are Hashmin. So the royal family historically in Jordan used their very special power, and like, I mean, like their I mean, this very special resource, and their you know, their ability to actually enslave people from another planet. They used all of that mostly to keep a family of scumbags like at the top of a very old school monarchy, which is something that people have done all over history. I mean, that's what humans do. I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, it's so old-fashioned that it's almost, I would say, boring. I mean, of course, these are all crimes against humanity. We shouldn't take it lightly, but I mean, from like, I mean, like a rational cult's perspective, it's very boring. Like, I mean, yeah, so, I mean, what's new? Like, I mean, you know, a family of creeps and, you know, and scumbags, I mean, they want to keep, like, in power, and they are kings and princes, like, you know, in Disney kings and princesses, and they like this to will, even though it's kind of like, I mean, everybody else, I mean, were way beyond it, I mean, since like long ago, but I mean, they are still in power, and like the monarch is actually the ruler of the state, and everybody accepts it all around the world, and like and everybody, like, I mean, is very, I remember, like, I mean, my father told me when I was younger that, I mean, the king of Jordan, not this one, like the father of the Abdallah, that is like a Melech Hatzili Meod, that is like a very noble king, like, I mean, we really admired him. I mean, no, he wasn't, he was a piece of shit. He was, a known criminal against humanity, Melech Hussein. But let's leave it aside. They are all criminals against humanity. But yes, but this kind of like a view, or among like people like in the intelligence communities of this world, that they are like noble family. Like, I mean, not only royalty and ruling like heads of state, but they are like nobles. Like, I mean, that they have something in their conduct. Of course, they all speak, I mean, excellent English, and you know, they dress like very, as you see, very well, and like, I mean, in Western style, and really, I mean, there is something so noble about this bunch of scumbags that should be crushed like cockroaches. But yeah, I mean, they're so noble, so noble. Anyway, this is, I mean, because, so, all of that is, of course, I mean, it's not, just to say, I mean, interestingly, I will pass to say that many times, I mean, people of the intelligence community, when they are affiliated with the country, because, you know, the fact that they are Israeli doesn't mean that they serve the Israeli intelligence. It's not like that. I mean, they can be Israeli and serve any kind of intelligence agency. This is true, more certainly in Israel, that is like, I mean, was always like a nest of wasps, you know, because it was always like, I mean, it's an immigrant country, and like everybody are traitors here, and you know, so I mean, there wasn't time in history of Israel that the place was not like flooded with, you know, Russian spies and American spies and whatever you want. And of course, Arab spies, it was always like that. But I mean, it's true actually everywhere, that you cannot, like, I mean, by the fact that someone belong to a certain nation or speaks a certain language, you cannot say that, I mean, what intelligence service he actually, like, serves. But among, like, mostly younger people, it's very common that they kind of, like, I mean, when they speak about the nation that they really serve, like, they degrade it. It's very common, at least in Israel. Like, if they serve, like, you know, the Italian, like, intelligence service, they will say bad things about Italians. But you will never get such a thing, I mean, from people that actually serve or associated with the Jordanian intelligence. I mean, they will only say that they are so noble, because these people are, it's old-style monarchy. They are filled to the ego, I mean, up to their noses, or the tip of their ears. And of course, that's how, I mean, it must be maintained that they are so noble, this bunch of war criminals. But I mean, all of that to say, in some way, I mean, it kind of like puts them in a lower level than the Israelis in the ladder of like criminals against humanity. It makes them like less disgusting than the Israelis. Because what's new? I mean, it's nothing new about it, because that's the way people, I mean, Homo sapiens were elected since like the dawn of history. Yes, I mean, royal families, which are just families that declare themselves royal, and they have also like this Disney fetishism. So, even though, everybody else, long ago, they don't do this, they don't do the king things. So, they don't do the king. So just I will say that I didn't finish the point. They were, like the Israelis, they were punished tremendously decades ago by the fact that the proliferation and tremendous increase of homosexuality and pedophilia within the Hashmi, the caste, like the higher caste of the Hashmim. So I don't know how it's called in English. In Israel, in Hebrew they say Hashmim. So there are many. Many were born like homosexuals and pedophiles, and since it was decades ago, it means that these people are about my age or even older than that. And this is like Israel. It's part of the punishment that, of course, is related to the things that they have done to the Titans, and like they force them to be homosexuals. But this is discussed a lot in this blog. But of course, unlike Israel, they couldn't in Israel they don't admit it as well. It's a secret in Israel, but in Israel it's kind of like it's in a secret way. It's represented in the fact that starting in the 1990s, even before of that, even in the 1980s, but during the 1980s it was mostly a Tel Avivian phenomenon. But since the 1990s, Israelis they are proud of the fact that they are kind of that they are LGBTQ friendly, presumably, they're open to diversity of people, and while they eat and cannibalize and rape people that have no political power. This is the real rainbow. This is the real rainbow. LGBTQ plus, not including cannibalism and systematic rape of poor creatures that have no political power. Anyway, of course, this phenomenon that Israel mostly in the last 2 decades actually became such a proponent of homosexuality and LGBTQ stuff is of course related to the fact that many were born like that because of the punishment of the intelligence and the security sectors. And this punishment is also true to Jordan, but they don't in their. But it's not trivial why actually the same. Presumably, you can say, of course, such a process didn't happen in Jordan because they are Islamic. But this is actually the question why such a process was not initiated in Jordan is not that. It's not such a simple question, and this relates to my initial question, like the main question of which, who is more disgusting? Because yes, a posteriori you can say yes, they are Islamic, but you could have said the same about Israelis. They are all Jews and all go to synagogue, and they are all so traditional. And many of the homosexuals are themselves traditional, like in Israel, and even right wing, which is something that is very uncommon in the rest of the world. But in Israel, you can have you can see many homosexuals that are also right wing and pro-military and even almost conservative in their views, which is something that is almost unheard of in the rest of the world, but in Israel it's not uncommon. I wouldn't say that most of them are like that, but quite a bit of them are like that in Israel. It's not a miracle, wonder of the world. It's something it happens quite a lot. And I speak about people that are openly outside of the closet. Of course, when we speak about people that are in secret, pedophiles, homosexuals, of course, a huge part of them are actually right wing and traditional and conservative. But this is in the closet. So the question why such a process was not initiated in Jordan is not that simple, and it relates to the question of who is more disgusting. So let's continue with the same argument. So the Jordanians use their power, and they're still using the power to just maintain one family of creeps, in top of the country and enslave, and of course they cannot do it alone, so they need a ruling class. It was always like that. One family cannot really, rule over a complete state. It was never like that. They always needed, since forever. So, but they have it with the Hashmin, with presumably they share ethnicity. So they are the ruling class of Jordan, and people are fine with that, even though this is, accompanied with tons of crimes against humanity, both in the public, surface level, and moreover in the secret layer. But I've already said it. So, they didn't do something incredible. They actually, they got this tremendous power and privilege of, contact with another civilization from another planet, and they mostly use this, in order that to keeping like this family of snakes in power. But the Israelis they actually use the power that they have, which is equivalent, maybe a little stronger, but in essence equivalent. They created something much more majestic and much more unique in the history of humanity. They created, and I should say something right now. In the previous video when I discussed Jordan, I said that, when you describe Jordan, with, they have like, ruling monarch, family of like a royal family and things like that, and they subjugate the Palestinians, then this is also, a fine description of Israel. So people can ask themselves, maybe I allude maybe to the, like, maybe, I don't know, to the fact that some people, like, see, I don't know, Bibi, like, as kind of like, presumably, like, very strong leader, like, and that he rules for so many years, like, more than any other ruler, and some people, people called him, like, jokingly or not, King Bibi. So maybe I was, like, it was kind of like, kind of like, a hidden metaphor, so not at all. And this is an important issue because, and this is an incredibly important issue. The society in Israel, they use their power, historically, to create something that is incredibly more unique and interesting than just, maintain, like, ruling class in power. They created a whole society that is based on parasitism and on being parasites. A whole society, like millions of people that are parasites. Like in Israel, almost everybody, they are all Haredim. Everybody, not only the Haredim, like the ultra-Orthodox are Haredim, but the rest are also Haredim. Everybody Toratam Umanutam. And this is like, they created a whole society based on this. And this is this is an incredible achievement, like, an historical achievement, like, in the modern world, to create a society that is based on being parasites. And it's so much more interesting and complicated and I would say impressive than just, put one family, like, on the top. So, Bibi is not that important at all. Yes, he's very strong leader, like, relative to other leaders in Israel, but if Bibi would have been eliminated totally from the map, today, it wouldn't affect Israel almost at all. It would have no effect on Israel, because no single person or family is so important in Israel. You cannot defeat Israel by, displacing one family or one person. It was never like that. Even in the days of Ben Gurion and also the days of Bibi or whatever, never. Because the Israelis, they created something that is far more complicated. They created a society that is inherently, in an inherent way, they are parasites and also like actors, like in a theater. Like everybody are parasites and actors in the theater. Everything is a charade, everything is hoax, everything is a show, and like it's all over the place. So like one ruler, one leader, one family doesn't mean anything at all. This is the society, and it's like all over this on all stratas of society. Like formerly Haredim, Hasidim, Litaim, Datim Lumim, Mitnachlim. All of them, Olim Chadashim, they are Kibbuznikim. All of them are parasites, and they are all actors in the theater show. Millions of people are parasites. And this is so much more impressive, like, in historical sense, than just, maintain like, one family of creeps on the top. Which is kind of, something that, people did all the time. But the Israelis, they use their special powers to create something unique. And maybe I should even say, impressive. Like, it's very impressive what the Israelis have done here. Which is so, it's also much more robust and, much more kind of like, it's kind of like, you cannot, you cannot change it. They're resistant. De facto, the Jordanians prove that they are also resistant to change. Because, like, the 100 years, it's the same family, the same, like, royal class, or the same, nobility. But, in Israel, it's much more impressive because even theoretically, you cannot, like, you cannot dispose any single person and change the society. Because the entire society is based on the principle of being parasites and being actors in a theater show. And I would suggest that this is like a great achievement of the Israelis, historical achievement, and that I don't know of any historical equivalents, but maybe there are several. There are actually. I'm not I like to learn about study. I like to study like Homo sapiens history, and I do it from time to time. But I don't know everything. So maybe there are like other examples from the history of Homo sapiens of such a phenomenon, but I don't know of such a phenomenon, certainly not in the modern world. And this is very impressive, like how they used the war crimes and against like other species, and to create like a society that is like that of millions of people that are, I mean, that the whole society is made of parasites and tear directors. And for that reason, I mean, I would have to say that, I mean, on this like tournament or competition between the Jordanians and the Israelis, I mean, take the, at least from my point of view, I mean, again, you can beg to differ, they take the first place, I mean, like, I mean, in the competition of who is more disgusting. We will never forgive the United States of America. They do not understand what's coming, and they do not understand the power of the species that they started the war with.